Audrey, let me jump back to you for a second. I've talked to people in the past who have said that they're oftentimes pressured by management or perhaps even a board member to select a certain CRO. So maybe you think this is the company we should go with, but it's a company they haven't heard of. So they might say, hey, maybe we should go with this company or that company because it's a more well-known name, or maybe it's a company they worked with in the past or worked for in the past. And that just seems to me to be so odd, because it would be like me hiring an electrician, finding the best one out there, having them come into my house, and then standing there and telling him what he should do. I mean, if you're hiring, a head of clinical operations, that seems to be a job for that person. And it just seems odd that you would try to tell them what the decision should be. Am I off on that at all?
No, you're spot on. So far, I was a consultant for years, and then I joined Pulmatrix in the fall with a lot of that decision-making responsibility. And then COVID hit, and we're a pulmonary company, so a lot of things have been on hold. But just recently, we have a new board member who used to work, I think, well, I won't mention names, but one of the very commonly known large international CROs. And, my CEO, to whom I report, said, well, let's look at this one and that one and the other one. And I thought, okay. And then I heard, well, he's got an in because he used to work at this large global CRO. And I thought, then he can have my office, because it's really where I'm going to have to put my foot down. So check with me in 6 months or a year. But that's one of the things that made me join the company, was to say, I don't think, I get what he's saying, and he probably can affect some change, but not at the level that it needs to be at, if that makes any sense. So I can't say that I've been through that. I may be going through that in the next 6 to 12 months. But I will probably make a good business case to say, it just doesn't make sense for us. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for the ideas. I'm happy to look at some of the large global CROs, again, some of the smaller, more niche ones. But I'm really hoping I don't get told, which CRO I have to use, because that would be really unfortunate. So you were actually very spot on about that.
Yeah, and somebody just asked a question that said they've had the same experience. If it's not a global study, you don't really want to go with a large CRO, but maybe a smaller niche CRO would be the best fit for you. But there could be so many of those out there, like trying to find all of the companies out there that could be a fit and trying to vet them and talk to them and determine who the best one is. That could take an awful lot of time, and a lot of times folks don't have that luxury of having a lot of time to make the decision. Are you of any way for companies, if they wanted to go with a smaller CRO, to be able to quickly identify who out there might be able to meet your needs and touch base with them?
So again, I've just dipped my toe in this, but there is a company called Life Science Marketplace. Because I have a monthly fireside chat with some colleagues, and the question is always coming up. It's like finding a CRO is like, finding a needle in a haystack. Like, where do you start? So there's two things. I actually created my own RFP template. Even though we're a tiny company, that way I can hopefully compare apples to apples a little more easily. But everyone has always said, like, why isn't there an Angie's List for CROs? So I recently met with Life Science Marketplace, and I'm not plugging them because I haven't worked with them yet, but they basically are trying to do that, trying to have, why wouldn't you, trying to think, if you were going to hire someone to paint your house, you'd probably get, 3 bids. You'd look at the offerings, the cost. I know a clinical trial is much more complicated than painting your house, but they seem to be really trying to be that sort of Angie's List, where you go in and you can either find the CROs, or you can say to your CROs, go in here and list yourself. And then I haven't used the platform yet. I'm going to for my next study, and that might be a good webinar for 6 or 8 months from now.
Tommy, I'll jump back to you. I know that a lot of the larger CROs now that want to do business with the smaller companies, I think recognize that the smaller companies feel like, hey, you're a CRO, but you're way too big for us. So it seems like a lot of those companies are now establishing like a biotech division or group within the company that says, if you're a small company, we have these folks here that are going to cater to you. And I don't know if you've ever had a chance to deal with any of those folks, or if you've ever spoken with someone who maybe has. But do you have any feedback, I guess, on how those groups are doing or how they're perceived by the market? And if not, what would your advice be to them if they wanted to get to a company like yours or like Audrey's? What could they or should they be doing to really get your attention and help you to know that they will be as effective for you as a smaller company?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I mean, I think we see a lot of the larger vendors in the clinical ops space, providing these smaller, medium-sized companies a business development opportunity niche that they're trying to fulfill and go after those markets, understanding that there's a lot of clinical research going on, within the indications across the industry by these smaller companies. And it makes me think of kind of a case example, a while back where we were looking at a range of CROs, and we did have a trial. It was a global trial, so we needed some presence, in another country. But a larger CRO had recently acquired a smaller CRO, and they were focused in the region specifically that we were targeting, and they introduced us to that team. And we ended up ultimately going with them after looking at about 7 different CROs because, they had this smaller team that they had brought in under their umbrella. And while they were, again, a larger organization now as part of the large CRO, they still kept that small feel and that company attention and that really specialized expertise within that smaller unit that we were able to leverage. And so I think giving sponsors an awareness of that, they understand there's a gap there, that, they're not just catering to large biotech, large pharma and medical device, and that they're focusing their business development units and really trying to put expertise in the small team feel in there can make a difference. And I think, you can see that's happening in some of the other clinical solution offerings and other, big companies that have been able to cater their services to small companies. And, I'd say I found that to be one of the most successful CRO experiences we've had. And, I credit them to identifying, a need that we had and then positioning us to, get to know that group and their smaller business unit to be successful.